Welcome to Bodies, Borders, and Breakthroughs, your podcast for a deep dive into the minds shaping global medical education. I'm your host, Dr. Tharusha Naidu. In this episode, we speak to Sheena Doyle, a Master of Science in Nursing student at McGill University and a labor and delivery nurse clinician. We explore how she uses arts as a powerful tool for critical reflection and health advocacy. Join us as we discuss her commitment to decolonizing healthcare and advancing ethical relational models of care through research and community engagement. Welcome, Sheena. It is wonderful to have you here today. We're really excited to have you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself to start.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sheena. I'm, as we mentioned, a labor and delivery nurse in Montreal. I was born and raised in Montreal. I'm 23 years old, so quite new to the field of academia, nursing, and to just adulting in general. Um, I'm a student, I'm a nurse, but I'm also now recently calling myself an artist. It's like a new title that I'm like, oh, I can't believe I'm able to call myself that. I just started posting my art out there. Um, I'm more involved in community engagement, starting to touch upon more academics and like research, but mostly in knowledge translation. So bringing research into the actual clinical practice. Um, so community engagement more in also teaching, TAing at McGill University. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay. So we like to hear stories on this podcast, not
Mhm.
fictional stories, but your story. So tell us about the journey of how you became a nurse and an artist. That's your lived experience journey. So where did each of those stories start? The artist story, the nurse story, when did they start, and how did they begin to intersect?
Mm. I really like how you phrased it as a journey. Um, the question is usually like, oh, why did you become a nurse? Or like, when did you know you wanted to become a nurse? And I'm always like, it wasn't really one instant where I was like, like nursing is my passion. Um, I remember when I was young, I was always by the water in Montreal on the St. Lawrence River. And my parents used to call me like the dragonfly saver. Because I would see like, because dragonflies will land on the water, but sometimes if their wings get wet, they get caught in the water, and I'd always go with my like finger and like save them. I just remember that actually a few years ago when I was like halfway through nursing, I was like, I think that quality of like observing what's happening and seeing like a dragonfly that's supposed to be like on the water, but actually like fell a little. So like, people that are like healthy in ways, but sometimes something is really wrong with their health and we're just there to like support them and get them out of the water. And I just thought that was like a good piece of self-reflection and being like, oh, like I think that quality of like observing and caring is what like led me to nursing, and not just being like, oh, I want to help people, and being like, oh, I just want to give, give, give. Because if you chose nurse, a lot of people like go into health choosing like, I just want to like help, but then like you yourself like burn out. So I thought
Mm.
that story was like really representative of like the journey of how I became a nurse.
Mhm.
More literally, I guess, academically. In Quebec, we have CEGEPs. So after high school, I went into the health sciences at Dawson College, and then I did my bachelor's in nursing at McGill, and then graduated to become a registered nurse or a nurse clinician. And then I went straight away into my master's of science in nursing at McGill because I really liked the advocacy part of the master's degree here. I'm not becoming a nurse practitioner, but it's actually like just a master's in nursing, advanced practice nursing. So I really didn't know why I chose nursing until like
Mm.
I reflected. And actually an elder from Ganawage once said like you didn't choose nursing, like nursing chose you. And that's when I was like, oh, I need to reflect on that. Like, and what instant in my life did
How
nursing
did you come
actually.
into contact with the elder from Gettinogwagwe?
So I live in Chattagee, which is right next to the territory of Ganawage. And also at McGill, we had an Indigenous Nurses Day,
Mm-hmm.
um, and which is on April 11th. And
Mm-hmm.
he came to come speak to us, and he did the words that come before all else, opening Thanksgiving like
Mm-hmm.
ceremony. And in that, he also like thanked us for like being healer, like to be nurses, and encouraged us.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the moments that really hit while speaking to us nurses for me was when he said like, you didn't choose nursing, nursing chose
Mm-hmm.
you on
Mm-hmm.
like your path of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then he asked, like, we had a panelist of Indigenous nurses, like, at what instance can you reflect that you saw nursing choose you in your life? And
Mm-hmm.
then that made me realize that I think nursing chose me when I was like a little girl, like picking up those dragonflies. And I think that's when I realized I
And
wanted to be in this profession. Yeah.
that was affirmed because you've always felt like you were in the right place when it came to nursing.
Yeah, so I did exploring in like physical therapy. I explored like being a physician, and I think like the somehow decisions in life from like CEGEP into like looking at the bachelor degrees, nursing really stuck out to me in the different options also because I really didn't know which field I wanted to go in, like geriatrics, pediatrics, community or
Mm-hmm.
just education. And then I realized, well, nursing is one of those fields. Once you have a bachelor's degree, you can explore all those options. Whereas maybe like physical therapy, you're a little more like in the hospital. Yes, you can do community work, but like it's a little more narrow. Or honestly, maybe if I do research, it's not that narrow. But I guess I
Right.
chose. Um, and my mom's a nurse, so that's when she also, I saw her working. She's retired now, but you know, that too also influenced me into nursing.
And then the journey into the arts, specifically how the arts intersect then eventually with
Mhm.
your nursing.
For the arts, being by the water a lot, and being an only child, I played in the sand a lot by myself. And I remember making like sand sculptures. And from there, I would like go on to like just sketching and drawing. And then I was doing this on like its hobby on its own on the side. But particularly in my undergrad, a lot of my teachers, um, they would have an assignment where they say, do whatever you want. You can write an essay, you can write a poem, write a song, write like anything that's creative that's like in your own way on like the subject. So the very first one was on, and we did an anatomy lab. So with cadavers, and to say thank you to the donors, we'd have to like do something creative to say thank you. It can be a letter,
Mm-hmm.
it could like,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I first wrote a poem. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I looked back at it. I don't think it's creative, but I didn't want to include it because I was like, it was good, but not one that I was like, oh, I could have made this a little better. But then I drew for my second one sunflowers. And I think that's when I realized, even with my poem, I like a lot of my teachers were like, this is really creative. Like, and then I was like, oh, like validated in a way, like this
Mm-hmm.
could be like part of, I guess, academia, but also part of nursing, to like show that you care, show empathy, and like show just like critical reflection as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the like, that's when it really started to intersect. But when advocacy in with arts and nursing started to all like blend together for me, was in a class in my undergrad with Dr. Madhu Pai, called Fundamentals of Global Health. And he had the exact
Mhm.
same assignment of do whatever you want, but have it something on like global health issues. So I drew a charcoal sketch for that. And then that
A
was
turtle?
no, a charcoal, sorry,
A
charcoal.
charcoal.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And it
Right.
was
Okay.
of like an IV saline bag with like one of the sustainable development goals of universal healthcare. And it was like floating above um, a community in the global south. And that got a lot of like, I got a lot of, I guess, praise, but like awe in that as well. And I realized, oh, like, visual arts was one of the things that like well you always say like a picture is like worth 1,000 words. Like it was like right away can catch people's eye, and then once they're like interested, then you can like it's advocacy. They're like reflecting back on it. Oh, like what does this mean and what this could mean. And I think that's how everything started intersecting for me in like nursing art and then advocacy.
It's a kind of a magical, dragonflies is, I'm sure you have also heard, are said to be a transition between different spaces. They can inhabit different
Mhm.
spaces physically and then also poetically, metaphorically, spiritually. So this process, I'm just hearing you say it and I'm thinking of the words that describe it for me. It sounds like seeing dragonflies. It's the way
Oh.
your little story was. Um, your little story, but it's a very big story because it's the big story of your life, but it's also a big story that resonates in two very big areas of humanity, nursing and
Mhm.
caring and nurturing. But also, it's a very human thing to do. I mean, nursing, especially the way you do it in that very important stage of life. And then also arts. It's a very, your story is only little in the sense that it reflects such a gigantic story. It's only little in relation to those gigantic stories. Um,
Mhm.
it's just making me think how um, important it is that we see ourselves, right? So in your work, you prioritize strengths-based, family-centered care. How does this, for you, look different from the more systemic models of nursing? And how have you
Mhm.
noticed, if you have, as you're trying to do this world walking and two-eyed seeing, these these traditional nursing models, Western nursing models, and the family-centered strength-based approach, how have they come to face each other? Where has there been areas of friction for you, and how have you dealt with those?
So I really like it clashes with like hospital policies and just like medical colonialism in a whole of how like we very like medicalize the system, and how we go like we it's like we call it like deficit based approaches and like the biomedical system,
Mhm.
how because when you're like learning about like the health like diseases and all that, yes, it's a big part to understand like how these systems work, how to treat it, how to like and how to identify it. And I think sometimes that like overlooks and overshadows the more I don't like to call it like soft science or like soft
Mm,
nursing skills, but
mm,
that's what they're called, of like just empathy, caring, or like getting to know the patient or knowing their stories, their narratives, as you said,
mm,
as you talk about, and how we don't have a lot of time in the hospital. Like a lot of protocols are based, yes, on like evidence-based practice, but also just like efficiency. And if you really look down to like productivity and cost. And so it really like the institutional rigidity of like protocols, policies is what really like looks different from like a strength-based like family center approach where you're really trying to like remember who the person is in front of you, and like the family or like who, or even like the indigenous saying of like the faces yet to come of it, that also resonated with me in my like in labor and delivery, because I'm like, I can't physically see the baby yet when I'm helping them through labor, but I remember like the face that's yet to come, but also like the patient that's in front of me and their partner and their family. So it really like was clashing. Also along the lines of we go like numb in healthcare, I think that things become
Mm,
so like not routine, but you do, especially in labor and delivery, it is the same thing over and over with a lot of instances of emergencies, of things going wrong. But like a lot of nurses go numb. I've only been practicing for a year. And I remember the
mhm,
first deliveries, I would cry. I was like so happy, like this is
mm,
amazing. And like the
mhm,
nurses were like, oh, it's okay. Like it'll go away soon. And
mhm,
it did go away. And talking with a professor at McGill University, actually an anthropology indigenous professor, Dr. Leslie Sabiston, he asked me like, I want you to reflect on where those tears went. And that really hit me like, oh, what do you mean where those tears went? Like, I still have them somewhere, I guess. I just stopped like crying, but I realized it's just it became like protocols and policies to me. And yes, I still like talk to the patients, but and when I was telling him that story, I realized like I wasn't really like getting to know their stories or getting to know them. And this like comes into also I reflected on like art never gets routine. Like there's skills that yes you do, like drawing, so, like sketching is almost the same, or like shadowing, but each
mm,
like product becomes unique. And I was like, well, also like nursing, each case that you have, each patient that you have, each family you have is unique. And I
mhm,
found like through reflecting and through experiences also, I did a field week in Ghana Satage about how like everything is interconnected and nature, family, like relations. And then that really like hit me like, oh, like I got my tears back basically on that trip. And I'm really thankful for building those relations. Now I went back to work, like realizing how everything's connected, relations, the faces yet to come. And so, yeah, those were, and I realized that like strength-based and family-centered care is like valuing your relations and just remembering that you're not just there to carry out policies and procedures. Like you're not like a robot, but you're still there feeling, you're in the moment, you're part of that story, basically. Yeah.
So how does your creative practice then influence the way you approach patient care? Your colleagues know about your creative practice, uh, professors and students
Mhm.
in your classes, but do you ever, in the moment of nursing, say something creative or do something, or does it ever come to you when you are being a nurse?
Um, I think nursing in itself, the creativity, we don't associate it with like art in sense of like visual arts or like
Mm-hmm,
dancing or like performative arts as well. But I feel like nursing in a way does have a lot of creativity of how like just problem solving or like talking with the patient. We're like the ones always at the bedside. And I think the creativity of like finding different ways to communicate with each patient, or like finding different ways to like solve a problem or to like talk to the family. Or even I know in labor and delivery we have a lot of position changes, and just being
mm-hmm,
creative in the ways of how we help like labor for the
mm-hmm,
family happen. I feel like those are where my creative art tries and like goes into my patient care. Um, I rarely say like, oh, like I'm an artist, you know? So like that's part like, but I feel like knowing like even just the way I created that shadow art was a lot of problem solving. It was like a puzzle. I sat in front of like light in a wall and I slowly piece by piece put those like materials together. And I think that slow, not slow process, but like problem solving with intentional process reflects like nursing. And but it is slower in a way that I'm not just doing it and not caring about, let's say, the shadow that it's going to create. Like I'm not just doing things in nursing without remembering like why we do each step, and like also collaborating as well with the family and with the patient. I think that's where like I'm like not doing like checklists or not following just the protocol, but also being creative in the ways of how I nurse, basically.
That sounds fantastic. Sheena Doyle, nurse and creative artist, thank you so much for your time today. It has been absolutely wonderful speaking to you and listening to you passionately and really creatively tell your story. We've loved talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I learned so much as well.